For K24's Newdon, my name is Joel Chacha, and as you can clearly see, today we have a special focus on the budget 2024-2025, which the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, will read, of course, to the nation in the afternoon session of Parliament today, and we'll be bringing you the live coverage right here from now 6 a.m. to the entire time, actually, or until the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, completes reading that particular budget on the floor of the House. And just the highlights of this particular budget. So far, according to the Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the National Assembly, that is Honorable, of course, Ndindi Nyoro, the budget for the next financial year, that is 2024-2025, once again, just to school you, this current fiscal year will end, of course, by the last day of this month. That means by the beginning of 1st July, we'll be in a new financial year, and that's what we refer to as 2024-2025 financial year. The budget for that particular year actually will be 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings, where the national government will get 2.35 trillion, getting the lion's share of the 4.006 trillion budget, and 1.6 trillion will go to the recurrent expenditure, even as 750 billion is meant for development. The consolidated fund services, this is where, of course, the monies that we use to repay the interest, the debt interest, and as well pension, and monies allocated to independent institutions such as EACC, of course, the DCI, or rather the control of budget, among other offices. Here, they will actually be getting a whopping 1.21 trillion Kenya shillings, even as counties will now get an additional allocation, and the budget will be 400.1 billion Kenya shillings. Other key sectors that, of course, are key to note is the judiciary as an arm of the government, which will get 23.69 billion Kenya shillings. Parliament will get 43.6 billion Kenya shillings. Now, revenue targets for the next fiscal year, totally it will be 3.4 trillion Kenya shillings. However, we do divide these into two, whereby we have the ordinary revenue, that is the money expected to be collected by KRA, that's the Kenya Revenue Authority, will shoot to a record high of 2.9 trillion Kenya shillings, even as the appropriations in aid, this is money that you pay to access government services. For instance, while accessing the e-citizen, the projections are actually 441 billion Kenya shillings. Now, the budget will also contain what we call the fiscal deficit. That is the money that we'll need to borrow, of course, a ratio of domestic and external in terms of actually financing the budget. It will now be at 609 billion Kenya shillings. That is 3.38% of our GDP. Also, we'll be focusing on the ministerial allocations. What sectors, on which ministries will actually be getting more allocations, and which ministries have actually received a budget cut. This is what actually will form a better part of a conversation this morning. On this set, today, from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., we'll be having very key guests in studio. That is Honorable Robert Basil, who is the Yatta Member of Parliament. We'll also be having Honorable Tom Odege Nyatike, Member of Parliament, and as well Honorable Lote, who is actually the Kacheliba Member of Parliament. That is Titus Lote. They will be here just, of course, to give their views on the budget 2024-2025. And from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., my colleague Linda Kosgei will be in the Parliament buildings, of course, with experts just to unpack this particular budget. But also in studio we'll be having key guests. That is Honorable Nabi Nabwera, who is the Lugari Member of Parliament, Honorable Geoffrey Ruku. He is the Mbeere North Member of Parliament, Honorable Gabriel Kagombe, the Gatundu South Legislator, and as well Ruth Kinyanjui, who is an economist, will be joining us virtually from the United States. Even as, of course, we take a look at President William Ruto's second budget. Share your views via social media platforms at K24 TV, at Joel Chacha, as well on our SMS and WhatsApp numbers on the bottom of your screens. Of course, I'll be sampling some of your feedback before wrapping up this day. Remember, this is a wall-to-wall coverage as we focus on the budget 2024-2025. But let's see what's on our dailies this morning, beginning with the People Daily. That is Kenya's #1 free newspaper. Splashes that outcry as Ruto said to pass his 3.9 trillion budget. The budget actually is a reduction of 273 billion from the 4.188 trillion due to low collection revenue, a following directive that spending will be realistic. Remember, they're contradicting figures as of now, whether the budget will be 3.9 trillion Kenya shillings or 4.006 trillion. According to the budget chair, that is Ndindi Nyoro, he says this is what is actually what will be expected will be 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings, but there is actually the appropriations bill which will be considered next week in Parliament, and that is why actually we are seeing that we have others saying 3.9 while others saying a 4 trillion Kenya shillings budget. But of course we go with the figures from the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, that is Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, who says that the budget will stand at 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings. However, it's still okay to say 3.9 trillion due to, as it stands, there are still estimates until the final budget is read. And now, of course, initially we saw during the BPS, that is the budget policy statement, there were projections that the next year's financial budget will be 4.118 trillion Kenya shillings, but that has since reduced to 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings. But the final figures will be read out today by the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. This, of course, is a major focus today as we unpack President William Ruto's second budget. Just let's peruse on page 7, 8, 16, and 17 of the People Daily. To begin, page 7 of the People Daily, where President William Ruto's budget, according to the People Daily, is disclosed on actually, or rather, President William Ruto's government is today set to disclose how it intends to spend the 3.9 trillion budget in the next financial year, which will commence July 1st. National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u is expected to deliver the highlights of the 2024-2025 budget to MPs this afternoon, where he will explain how the three arms of the government will finance and spend the budget. He's also expected to explain how the Kenya Kwanza administration will navigate the tight balancing between the debt servicing and supporting the recovery of the economy. Now, remember the figures are a reduction. Initially, we had the BPS 4.188 trillion Kenya shillings, but due to under collections of revenue, of course, following the Ruto's directive that the budget should be cut, it's the reason we are now seeing the new figures at 3.9 trillion or 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings. Now, the budget also comprises of 1.58 billion in recurrent expenditure, even as 727 billion in development expenditure. 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings will go to the consolidated fund services, even as 400 billion, there should be a correction here, 400.1 billion Kenya shillings should go or be allocated to the counties as their equitable share. According to a statement from the National Treasury, there was a notification that was given that today by 3 p.m. the Cabinet Secretary will be reading the budget, of course, in Parliament. And this comes at a time that Kenyans have not only actually been grappling with the high cost of living, but have also raised concerns over the increased taxes that have continued to be imposed on them. The National Assembly Departmental Committee on Finance has actually retreated to compile its report on the controversial Finance Bill 2024 after it concluded its meetings with various stakeholders and government institutions. About 108 of 120 stakeholders in the manufacturing, telecommunication, edible oil, banking and digital sectors have already opposed a number of proposals contained in the finance bill, arguing that it will lead or not lead to job losses, but will not only actually lead to job losses, but will also hurt Kenyans' pockets. Now, in the budget, The executive has been allocated 2.243 trillion Kenya shillings, out of which 11.4 billion goes towards the equalization fund and 5 billion for contingency fund. The contingency fund, of course, this is monies allocated for emergencies. According to the the budget, 8.5 billion has been allocated to the Auditor General, while Parliament has been allocated 43.62 billion and the judiciary 23.69 billion. The National Treasury estimates that the economy will grow by 5.5% in the 2024, and above 6% on the average in the medium term. That is from 5.6% in 2023. That's according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and 4.9% in 2022 due to improved agricultural output owing to the above average rainfall, and of course the issue of the subsidized fertilizer. Now, for the provide buffers, actually, further the growth, National Treasury says it's because of the continued implementation of the BETTER, that is the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Critical Illness Fund, this of course is an area of concern where Linda Mama program and equipping of various hospitals and the Kenya Medical Training Institute have been allocated 3.7. These actually are ministerial allocations that will also be unpacking this morning with my key guests in studio. Back to our cover page of the People Daily. On matters politics, Gachagua on the cross, MPs threatened to impeach besieged DP. These are being on the page 4 of the People Daily. With the Deputy President being impeached, what does it mean to actually impeach a DP? The onslaught of verbal attacks on the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua intensified on Wednesday, with MPs tearing into his conduct during a debate in the National Assembly that lasted more than an hour. And in a sign of tough times ahead for the Deputy President, a member claimed that he had initiated a process to impeach him. That is the Gatundu North Member of Parliament, Njoroge Karuria, who claimed in a social media message that his purported motion has already attracted the backing of 56 members. And just to quote him verbatim, he said that, "I want to warn the DP that if he continues to shout at us, we will impeach him." Kukuria actually wrote in a message on an MP's WhatsApp group that has been seen by MediaMax-owned People Daily. In fact, the message continues to say that, "I have 5 MPs who are fighting on who will be the first to append the signature to the motion." In the National Assembly, Speaker Moses Wetangula allowed members to debate the DP's conduct for 1.5 hours in an apparent coordinated verbal attacks involving both the majority and minority sides. Now, misleading statement, Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah tore into the DP's character, accusing him of issuing a misleading statement, claiming his arrival for a church service in Nakuru last weekend was delayed by bad weather. Ichung'wah said that we left Nairobi at the same time, and I can confirm that there was no delay, save for a 5-minute interruption around Mount Longonot. And he also accused the DP of disrespect, or disrespecting elected leaders, especially those from Nyeri and other Mount Kenya counties. And for instance, the Nyeri Town Member of Parliament, Honorable Duncan Mathenge, rising on a point of order, claimed that the 6 MPs representing constituencies in Nyeri, county, had suffered under the DP, who allegedly demanded that they accompany him to whatever function he attended, including night bashes and Muratina drinking parties. Mathenge said that, "I speak on behalf of Nyeri 6 MPs and can attest that we have suffered under someone who has been demanding that we accompany him to every party he attends," on claims that the DP has been denied a military chopper. In fact, because I was in Parliament yesterday, I heard that also the DP has threatened to field candidates who contested against the current members of Parliament. So for the 6 members of Parliament that we have, of course, the ones who came second during the 2022 general election, the DP had threatened to field those particular candidates come 2027 under the ruling party UDA, and that, of course, has not augured well with these MPs. Now, on claims that the DP has been denied a military chopper, remember we also saw him board KQ to Mombasa, even carrying a suitcase. I'm not sure whether the suitcase did fit in the plane or had to be carried, of course, in the cargo section. But Ishungwa said that he would write to the Defense Cabinet Secretary, Aden Duale, and ask him to appear before the lawmakers to explain what has been transpiring. This, of course, is as far as the Gachagwa's issue is concerned, and we'll be seeing whether the motion of impeachment will be tabled by the Gatundu North Member of Parliament, Njoroge Koruria. That is as far as matters politics is concerned this morning. Back to our cover page. Pension for two-term governors, county chiefs, and the deputies to get lifetime pay if legislators pass proposed law. This basically means if anyone serves as a governor for 2 terms, then they will receive pension for the entire life. Governors and the deputies who serve 2 terms in office will be entitled for a lifetime pension should MPs pass a proposed amendment to the law governing state officers' welfare. The proposal actually by the Nyando Member of Parliament, Jared Okello, seeks to amend the retirement benefits, that is the Deputy President and Designated State Officers Act, to have governors and the deputies included in the League of President, Deputy President, and MPs who are guaranteed a gratuity and a lifetime pension upon retirement. The county chiefs currently enjoy a gratuity, a gratuity equivalent to 31% of their basic pay and in the period they serve. Okello has written to the Speaker, that is Moses Wetangula, communicating his intention to amend the retirement benefits law. And he has argued that governors and their deputies are state officers just like MPs and thus should be catered once they leave office. This, of course, will elicit a debate, but we'll be seeing how that will be handled. Well, we shift gears now to, of course, another paper. That is the Daily Nation. Ruto faces Mount Kenya. President William Ruto returned to Mount Kenya today, and we'll see him come face to face with issues that threatening to foment a rebellion against his government, even as he seeks to pacify a region that voted for him almost to a man in the 2022 polls. What the president has to confront is the protests by Gachagua, that is his deputy president, and the retired president, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, also the opposition to new taxes, the place of Miraa and Muguka, and as well coffee and tea reforms. We'll be, of course, bringing you these particular updates in a subsequent bulletin. Still on the Daily Nation, pass punitive tax bills without changes, MPs told. Now, the Treasury wants Parliament to adopt punitive tax measures contained in the Finance Bill 2024 in order to raise revenue to pay Kenya's debt that currently stands at 11.2 trillion Kenya shillings. But remember, according to Ndindi Nyoro, these particular figures oscillate considering, of course, our currency. And the Treasury has now defended the additional taxes and an expanded tax base, arguing that Kenya's debt situation is set to take a turn for the worse in the medium term. 302 billion Kenya shillings is what the Finance Bill 2024 seeks to finance the budget with. And the National Planning Committee has actually begun the report writing in Naivasha. We'll be seeing how that particular report will look like next week, Tuesday, when the Kuria Kimani-led committee will table it in Parliament. Also, to another paper this morning, that is the Taifa Leo. Aenda kuzima mlipuko mlimani, basically the president going to, of course, just cool the temperatures, the political temperatures in the mountain region, saying Rais William Ruto leo anaelekea eneo la Mlima Kenya, wakati malalamishi ya naibu rais Rigathi Gachagua na rais mstaafu Uhuru Kenyatta yanatishia kuchochea wasi dhidi ya serikali yake ya Kenya Kwanza. That, of course, is what the Taifa Leo splashes this morning. It's in Swahili that President William Ruto will begin his trip. But in today evening, I understand that they will be meeting, or President William Ruto will actually be meeting with the Kenya Young Parliamentarians, a meeting that will be attended by the Azimio principal, Raila Odinga. Now, the Standard newspaper highlights of tax paying, but what's there to show for it? The Treasury CS will today deliver President William Ruto's second budget at a time when Kenyans are up in arms over the high cost of living. But even as the minister lists fiscal and policy measures to grow the economy, questions are being asked of what the government has to show for the increased tax burdens of Kenyans. Keep actually sending your views via social media platforms once again at K24 TV, at Joel Chasha, that is on our social media platforms, and as well on our SMS and WhatsApp numbers at the bottom of your screens. I'll be sampling your feedback as they stream in right here on the New Dawn. Today with a special focus actually on the budget 2024-2025. But let's first of all focus on this story, where members of parliament on Wednesday called out the conduct of the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, saying it is beneath his office the legislators took to the floor of the House to castigate what they say are theatrics in the executive following the choice of transport that the second-in-command chose to use during his visit to Mombasa. And as Brian Amwai reports, the leader of Majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, maintains that the ample budget allocated to his office should afford him the respect he deserves, including the choice of transportation.
Fabric that holds the Kenya Kwanza government together continues to wear out. The public display of wrangles has now become a subject of conversation, not just in the political arena, but also on the floor of the National Assembly.
We have lately seen discordant voices, especially emanating from the presidency.
These photos of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua boarding a KQ flight while carrying his own briefcase have elicited a lot of debate and seemingly confirming the talks on his frustrations in government. And now, members of parliament put it on the floor to confirm whether the Deputy President was being frustrated or is just seeking sympathy.
A real problem that the Deputy President is suffering, that as a House we can help him solve, that this is the right platform. But if he's creating, disunity and playing victim at the same time so that a particular section of the government would go a different way, then we want to know and call him to order.
Inafaa wakati huu tuwe tunaongea juu ya finance bill, Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini tetesi ambazo zinakuja katika taifa hili wakati huu ni vipi Deputy President anatembea, naibu wa rais ametembea na begi, sijui imekuwa vipi.
Nothing that stops them from dragging that Gachagua here so that they can impeach him. They can impeach him so easily by bringing him here and vote against him. So why should we divert from business of this House and enter into some charade and hypocrisy and politics instead of doing business which is before us?
Mr. Speaker, the Deputy President is very serious about supporting the talents in this country. Only a few days ago, Mr. Speaker, the Deputy President was there for the launch of the Bahati show, Mr. Speaker. We might have had a continuation of the same show on the side, on the runway of at JKI, Mr. Speaker.
The act of a Deputy President towing a travel bag on a runway is not a display of talent. And it cannot be.
That bag is for something else. Another thing that struck me in that episode is what was the content of that bag, because the Deputy President could not even give it to his bodyguard.
The Deputy President did not just appear for the photograph. The Deputy President was driven to the airside with his full security detail, including the presidential guards that guard him from the Wrecker Squad. They were there with him. There were adequate, not less than 14 officers traveling with him on that plane, including photographers, security men, bloggers.
His conduct and the latest scenes being a subject of debate, with members arguing that it is beneath his office.
Spika, sisi tunajua majukumu ya naibu wa rais. Na hata kama leo pengine Mheshimiwa Spika wewe pia ungefanywa hivyo, tungesimama hapa kuweza kukutetea, kwa sababu kuna bajeti ambayo imewekwa na tumemuona mara kadhaa akilalamika kuwa ndege imemwacha, ameambiwa sijui kuna hivi na vile. Kwa hiyo kuna shida katika taifa letu.
True, Honorable Speaker, in terms of the dignity and honor that comes with that office, Honorable Speaker, I think the Deputy President had this flight paid for by the government of Kenya using taxpayers' money. And to give his office the honor and dignity, those who are keen observers did observe he was seated on seat 1A of that flight.
In the past few weeks, Gachagua has faced scrutiny amid allegations of frustrations within the government. His lateness at a presidential function on Sunday, citing transportation issues, has only added fuel to the speculations.
The Deputy President entitled to use of military aircraft. Honorable Speaker, I did engage the Cabinet Secretary for Defense, and indeed I have asked, Honorable Speaker, so that we may put this matter to rest, I will be writing to the Cabinet Secretary for Defense to appear before this House in plenary to answer to questions pertaining the use of military aircraft in the country. Because he did assert the other day that only the President and the First Lady, the President as Commander-in-Chief, since we don't have a Deputy Commander-in-Chief, has access to military aircraft.
With Gachagua maintaining his stance on the 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote, the members of parliament now say the talk could divide the nation ethnically, as they called out Nyeri Governor Mutahi Kahiga.
And their conduct in public. And it's at this point sometimes, Honorable Speaker, that we ask whether clearly NCIC is operational. Because at this point, we should be seeing the governor for Nyeri being summoned and questioned for his utterances against a certain community.
Nobody gives you a guarantee because you have the numbers that you're going to take over country. No. Let us protect our unity.
The second in command has, however, dismissed those who accuse him of being a villager and championing for the interests of the mountain. Speaking in Mombasa, Gachagua said he is proud to be associated with his village.
Nikae alafu niende kwa village. Unajua kila mtu wako mahali alitoka. So kila mtu wako na kwao.
Brian Amuai, K24.
Well, we now focus on what will also form a better part of our discussion this morning as we focus on the 2024-2025 financial year's budget, where a section of Azimio MPs and UDA's Gathoni wa Mushomba have threatened to shoot down the Finance Bill 2024 if the Finance Committee fails to incorporate the views of Kenyans and experts on contentious clauses. However, Kenya Kwanza MPs have criticized this stance as doublespeak, arguing that these MPs want development without supporting measures to raise revenue. They challenged these MPs to publicly declare their willingness to forfeit development budgets for projects in their constituencies. And it's all systems go, even as today, of course, President William Ruto's budget is set to be unveiled.
The 4 trillion budget for the financial year 2024-2025 is set to be unveiled tomorrow in Parliament, becoming the second under President William Ruto's government. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndungu will read the budget in the afternoon session of the National Assembly, a budget that has drawn different reactions.
We are being ambitious. Let us let the government look at fiscal consolidation. Let's live within our means. I think that's why we need to start. Because globally, even the global economy is not improving.
The financing of the budget, however, could remain the biggest challenge, as a section of MPs have threatened to shoot down the finance bill if the report of the Finance Committee fails to amend it.
Mimi nitapeleka amendments zangu bunge, niko na amendments kama 13. Zisipokubalika katika bunge, mimi nitavote no.
Parliament here will be bought, will be given money by the president, but we will stand our ground. We will fight for Kenyans because that is the right thing that we should be doing. So whether they shoot it down or not, we will stand and be counted as the few. I will stand and be counted as one of the few members of parliament who stood with Kenya.
I would say I've gone through public participation with the people of Dagoretti North. Their word is just one, that if they do not change, yes, we have to say no. I will be saying, oh, we can shoot it, no. But those who will say no, will say no, for the purposes of, for us, history to come and judge us after.
However, those in support of the bill have called out the naysayers defending it, that revenue generated will sprout development.
For those who want to say that their constituents who elected them do not want any development, they should stand up in parliament and boldly proclaim it. This masquerading that I want development and the development comes at a cost, but I do not care where the money comes from, is a luxury that the parliamentarians do not enjoy.
Where he stands, we must have a finance bill. Anyway, it has to be there.
Advise us on how to advise him. He doesn't take any advice. So therefore, we members of parliament who are with the people, we will always fight for the people. We will always be on the side of the people, by the people.
The Kuria Kimani-led committee has retreated in Naivasha for report writing, which will be tabled in Parliament next week, Tuesday, for debate, ahead of voting on Thursday. Joel Chacha, K24 TV, Nairobi. And as promised, we now focus on the budget 2024-2025. And in studio, I'm joined by very key guests, that is members of parliament will be present during the reading of the budget by the, of course, the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, that is at around 3 p.m. On my right is Honorable Titus Lote. He is the Kacheliba Member of Parliament. Thank you so much for getting time this morning. As well, Honorable Tom Odege, seated right in the middle. He is the Nyatike Member of Parliament. Thank you so much for coming once again on this show. And as well, Honorable Robert Basil, who is the Yatta Member of Parliament. Thank you so much for getting time. Well, just to begin with the highlights of this budget, the figures that I'm going to state, remember, there is a bit of confusion whether it's 3.9 trillion Kenya shillings or what will be the next year's financial year's budget. According to the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, that is Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, the total budget for 2024-2025 is said to be at 4.006 trillion, and the national government will actually get a land share of 2.35 trillion Kenya shillings, out of which 1.6 trillion Kenya shillings is the recurrent expenditure. Development expenditure has been allocated 750 billion Kenya shillings. The Consolidated Fund Services will get 1.21 trillion Kenya shillings. The county's equitable share will climb up to 400.1 billion Kenya shillings. The judiciary will be allocated 23.69 billion Kenya shillings, as Parliament will get 43 billion Kenya shillings. The total revenue targeted is 3.43 trillion Kenya shillings, out of which 2.9 trillion Kenya shillings is the ordinary revenue, as 441 billion Kenya shillings has been targeted as the appropriations in aid. This is actually the money that you pay to access government services. The fiscal deficit, according to Ndindi Nyoro, will be 609 billion Kenya shillings. That is 3.38% of the GDP. Initially, we had anticipated it actually to stand at 514 billion Kenya shillings, which would have been 2.9% of the GDP. But these are the figures as of last evening, according to Ndindi Nyoro, who is the budget chair in the National Assembly. Just to begin with the Honorable Lote, 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings is the budget for the next financial year. Of course, we'll be seeing how the final figures will be looking like in the afternoon when the Treasury CS Njuguna Ndung'u presents the budget. What do you make of it?
Well, thank you, and good morning, Kenyans. We are progressing as a nation, and every year we've actually seen that our aspirations in terms of budgets have actually been going up. Now we're crossing the 4 trillion figure. We've never been here before. I think last year we were at 3 point. We started with 3.1. I think we raised, now we're going at 4.1 trillion. Something that is encouraging, because that shows us that we are growing as a nation, because we are setting high aspirations for ourselves. The only thing I need to also say is that budgets are aspirations. Budgets are not figures that are available. We just make progress in terms of what we think we can be able to collect and spend. But then the other hard bit, which I think we were going to discuss more today, is how are we going to get the monies to be able to meet to our aspirations of 4.1 trillion. So the ball is on the Kenyans to allow the government to be able to collect the monies that they have stated and the aspirations that Kenyans want to reach. For me, it's a good thing that we're growing, but it's also not a very good thing that we might be pushing too much. We might be having too much aspirations beyond what we can be able to collect as a nation.
Honorable Tom Odege, even as we begin our conversation this morning, 4.006 trillion Kenya shillings, the budget for the next fiscal year.
Thank you very much. I want to pick from where my colleague has ended. And that has been what has been worrying me very much. When you project a budget of 4 trillion and you know very well you can't achieve it, it becomes very unrealistic. When you look at the revenue we are collecting in this country, even if we are aspire to reach somewhere, we should always be very realistic, because now we make our own expectations and make Kenyans to expect too much, which is obvious we are not going to achieve as a country. Now you look at things which we have proposed in the budget, those who are listening to the budget will think that we are going to achieve that one as a country. And when you come now to the actual funds being released, you realize most of those things are just made there to make us happy. At the end of the day, we are not achieving them. Our revenue collection as a country and what we are projecting as a budget for the country should not be more than 30% gap. That one is very unrealistic, and I can say it makes us be optimistic where we cannot achieve.
So if today you had a chance to actually decide what the budget will be, how much would you settle for?
We can still talk about 3 trillion, because even the 0.9 we are talking about is impossible. 3 trillion the budget is realistic for the country.
Well, also let's get opening remarks from Honorable Robert Basil, the other Member of Parliament. The President William Ruto's second budget, it has now crossed the 4 trillion mark. What do you make of it?
First, good morning, Chacha. My voice is not very clear today because I'm recovering from some cold. I want to say that there's an adage which says that too much ambition breaks a man, but too little takes him nowhere. I think it's good not to be too ambitious, because the kind of budget which we are projecting is a budget that tends to put us in a very ambitious path, considering many Kenyans are really struggling. And what I would advise as a Member of Parliament and a patriot, someone who loves this country, I think we need to cut on recurrent expenditures, reduce on wastages, and narrow the budget to a very achievable, realistic budget that is not going to add more burden to Kenyans. Remember, if you ask the CS for Treasury, how do you intend to raise money to fund this ambitious budget? He'll tell you are going to increase taxes, which is ideally what is being contained in this 204 finance bill, where so many new taxes are going to be introduced. And this is not what many Kenyans want to hear, considering they have been struggling from the 2023 Punitive Finance Act. That has really made things, particularly basic commodities, not affordable to many Kenyans. And now, for those who have done economics, there are theories of taxation. One of it is Laver's curve, or mode of taxation, whereby there are some limits where citizens can be able to accommodate new taxes. But then there's an elastic limit where if you continue, instead of you being able to realize the taxes, you go to a nosedive. That is ideally what's going to happen. You heard the other day that the KRA was not able to meet the target for revenue collection. And based on all this, I think we need to go to the drawing board, look at what can be achievable and what cannot be achieved, so that we live within our means. And that is what any patriot would want to see, so as a country can remain more stable. And finally, when you look at the way the budget allocation is done, our priorities don't seem to align with what many Kenyans and taxpayers want to see. For example, so much has been put in agriculture. They put 10 billion in agriculture, where 4 billion is going to subsidize fertilizer. If you look at the 47 counties of this country, how many of them have issues with infertility of their farms? I would say not more than 10% of the 47 counties. So why would you put so much money on subsidized fertilizer and put so little on irrigated agriculture, which is the main issue? Because if we construct mega dams and be able to support mechanized agriculture and also get most of our youth to farm, we'll be able to produce more for this country and mitigate importation and give ourselves a very healthy balance of trend. So these are some of the very pertinent concerns which myself am putting across considering this budget for this year. Thank you.
Of course, we'll be unpacking further the ministerial allocations for the fiscal year 2024-2025 in terms of the budget. But just to go on how much, of course, various arms of the government will be getting. But even before that, the national government is set to get a lion's share of 2.35 trillion Kenya shillings, out of which 1.6 trillion is the recurrent and development 750 billion Kenya shillings. Honorable Ote, the figures. One out of 2.3 trillion Kenya shillings, we have 1.6 trillion going to the recurrent expenditure. Remember, there was a conversation on us actually cutting down on the recurrent expenditure. That is the wage bill conversation.
Well, I think looking through the years, you can actually see a country that has been struggling to ensure that the recurrent expenditure come down. And I think this is not unique to Kenya alone. It's unique to all the third world countries or the developing countries. It is also unique to our counties. If you look at our counties specifically, you'll find that there are counties that are spending up to 98% of what they get on the recurrent. And yet the aspirations for Kenyans is that we need to have not more than 70% going for recurrent, because that way then we might not be able to achieve any development, or our monies will be going to paying salaries and allowances and be able to keep government running without having meaningful development activity. So it's not unique to Kenya, but also I can also say that despite all the dark clouds that we're seeing on this, we have improved. We have improved. There's a time where this country came from where close to 100% of our budget was actually going for recurrent. So if we can still speak of something small that goes to development, then I can really say that we've really moved. We've really moved a little bit ahead in terms of in comparison to what we've come from and before. So we are doing bad, I can say, but not as bad as we came from where we came from.
Bad in terms of how much you've allocated for development, that's your concern?
Yes, we are doing bad, but not as bad as where we came from. I remember during the Moi's time, we actually depended entirely, our budget entirely, including what we borrowed, was actually going for paying our salaries. And actually you can remember the last president, the fourth president of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, was actually reached a point where we could actually borrow to be able to finance our recurrent. So we are doing bad, but not as bad as where we come from.
Honorable Tomodege, on how much we are allocating for development vis-a-vis that for the recurrent expenditure, understanding, of course, recurrent contains allowances. For those who would like to travel, let's say in the government.
Okay.
And there was a bite actually from one member, that is the Nyeri Town Member of Parliament, Honorable Duncan Mavenge, saying that if at all Azimio MPs or the minority will not support revenues of or measures of actually raising revenue, then you should declare publicly that you don't want development. And I heard you talk about how much we even allocate.
I listened to Madenge talking. The only advice I can give Madenge, let him take his time to learn how things are done in Parliament, because he cannot threaten us, and he's thinking that we can